Welcome to Behind Closed Hearts. Subscribe and like. Enjoy watching.
My name is Derek Hall. I'm 39 years old, and until recently, I was absolutely convinced I had full control over my life. Not in an arrogant way, at least that's what I used to tell myself. It was more like a quiet confidence. I had built something stable, a career that paid well, a house that felt earned, and a marriage that, from the outside, looked solid, predictable, safe. Laura and I had been together long enough that everything felt settled. We didn't argue much. We didn't question each other. We had routines, morning coffee in silence, occasional dinners out, weekends that blurred into each other in a comfortable way. I thought that meant we were doing things right. Looking back now, I think it meant I stopped asking questions. It started the night of her boss's party. I remember standing in the bedroom, adjusting my tie, already annoyed before we even left. Corporate events were never my thing. Too much pretending, too many people trying to impress each other. But Laura insisted. She said this one mattered. Said her boss, Greg Wallace, was finally noticing her work and this event was important for her future. So I went. The venue was exactly what I expected. Dim lighting, expensive decor, people holding glasses they barely drank from. Conversations overlapped into a constant hum, and everyone seemed just a little too polished to be genuine. Laura, though, she fit right in. That's the first thing that felt off, if I'm being honest. She wasn't just comfortable. She was alive in a way I hadn't seen in a long time. Confident, smiling, engaged in conversations that seemed to pull her in completely. She moved through the room like she belonged there more than anywhere else. At one point, I lost track of her. I was standing near the bar, half listening to a conversation I didn't care about, when I spotted her across the room. She was standing next to Greg. They were close, not in an obvious way, nothing you could point to and say that's wrong, but close enough that it caught my attention. She was laughing. Not the polite kind of laugh she used with me lately. This was different, lighter, effortless. Something about that moment stuck with me, even before everything else happened. I told myself I was reading too much into it. I always did that. Pushed aside anything uncomfortable and replaced it with logic. She's networking. This is important to her. Don't make it about you. So I didn't say anything. A little later, she stepped away again. Said she needed to greet someone. She left her phone on a small cocktail table next to where I was standing. And that's when everything changed. I wasn't looking for anything. That's the part one keep coming back to. I didn't pick up her phone out of suspicion. I didn't have some gut feeling pushing me toward it. It just happened. The screen lit up. Right in front of me, a message preview appeared, clear enough that I couldn't not read it. Same time tonight. Let's continue the evening at the hotel. I froze. At first, my brain didn't even process it correctly. It felt out of place, like I had misread something. Like there was context missing that would suddenly make it harmless. But there wasn't. I picked up the phone before I could stop myself. My hands felt disconnected, like they were moving on their own. The message was from a number, not a saved contact. I opened it. There were more messages. Short, efficient, casual in a way that only happens when something has already been established. Times, locations, subtle confirmations. Nothing dramatic, nothing emotional, which somehow made it worse. This wasn't new. This wasn't impulsive. This was routine. My chest tightened in a way I'd never felt before. Not just anger, something deeper. Like the ground under everything I believed in had shifted without warning. Derek! Her voice snapped me out of it. I looked up. She was standing a few feet away, watching me. Her expression changed the second she saw the phone in my hand. For a split second, barely noticeable, I saw panic. Real panic. But it disappeared almost immediately, replaced by something controlled. Calculated. "What are you doing?" she asked. Her tone wasn't shocked. It wasn't even defensive. It was irritated. That caught me off guard more than anything else. I held up the phone, still trying to process what I had just read. "What is this?" I expected her to stumble, to explain, to deny it maybe. Instead, she exhaled slowly, like she was already tired of the conversation. "Derek, seriously?" she said, lowering her voice. "You're going through my phone now?" The shift was so fast it almost worked. I blinked. "I'm not going through your phone." It lit up. I saw the message. "Laura, it literally says, 'You don't trust me,'" she interrupted, shaking her head. I stopped. "What? This," she gestured toward the phone, "is exactly what I've been talking about. The constant suspicion. The tension. It's exhausting." For a moment, I just stared at her. It didn't make sense. "You're serious right now?" I asked. "There's a message about meeting at a hotel, and you're turning this into my issue?" She crossed her arms, her expression hardening slightly. "Because it is your issue. You're jumping to conclusions without context." "What context could possibly make that normal?" I asked. "It's called networking, Derek," she said quickly. "People meet after events. You know how these things work." "No," I said, my voice tightening. "I don't know how that works." She sighed again, like I was being difficult on purpose. And that's when it hit me. This wasn't panic. This wasn't someone caught off guard. This was someone managing a situation, redirecting it, controlling it. "You're making a scene," she added quietly, glancing around. "At my boss's event. Do you realize how that looks?" There it was. The pressure. The shift from truth to image. Suddenly, it wasn't about the message. It was about me being inappropriate. Me being disruptive. Me embarrassing her. And the worst part? For a split second, I felt it. That doubt. That hesitation. That tiny voice asking, what if she's right? That's what scared me the most. Because it meant this wasn't the first time she had done this. Maybe not with me consciously noticing, but enough times that she knew exactly how to handle it. I looked at her differently then. Really looked. Not as my wife. Not as the person I thought I knew. But as someone standing in front of me, carefully controlling every word, every reaction, every angle of the situation. And something inside me settled. Not exploded. Not broke. Settled. Cold. Clear. Certain. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a pattern. And standing there, in that crowded room where everyone kept smiling like nothing mattered, I realized something I couldn't unsee anymore. I didn't know my wife at all. I didn't argue with her after that. That's the part that surprised me the most. A few months ago, maybe even a few weeks ago, I would have pushed harder. I would have demanded answers, raised my voice, tried to break through whatever wall she had just thrown up between us. But standing there, in that room full of people pretending to be something they weren't, I realized something simple. Nothing I said in that moment would matter. She wasn't reacting. She was performing. So instead of escalating, I just nodded slowly, like I was accepting her explanation. "Yeah," I said quietly. "Maybe you're right." I saw the shift in her eyes immediately. Relief. Not obvious, not dramatic, but there. Like tension she didn't realize she was holding just slightly loosened. That told me everything I needed to know. "I'm going to get some air," I added, placing her phone back on the table. She studied me for a second, like she was trying to read something deeper, something hidden behind my calm. But I didn't give her anything. "Don't disappear," she said, her tone softer now. "We'll leave soon." I just nodded again and walked away. The second I stepped outside, the noise from the party faded behind me, replaced by a kind of silence that felt heavier than anything inside. Cool night air hit my face, but it didn't help. If anything, it made everything sharper, clearer. I stood there for a while, hands in my pockets, staring at nothing. And that's when it started. Not anger, not yet, just replay. Every little thing from the past few months started lining up in my head, like pieces of something I had been ignoring. Her late nights, the work dinners that seemed to come out of nowhere, the way she started taking her phone everywhere, even into the shower. At the time, I joked about it, asked if she was expecting some kind of emergency. She laughed it off, said work had just been intense. Then there were the passwords. That one stuck with me now more than anything. We never hid things from each other before. Not because we checked, just because there was no reason to. Then suddenly, everything was locked. New passwords, Face ID, notifications turned off. When I asked about it, she said it was a security thing. Something about company policy. I believed her. Or maybe I just didn't want to question it. And the distance, that was the hardest part to admit. It wasn't dramatic. No big fights. No obvious breakdown. Just small shifts. Conversations getting shorter. Responses feeling delayed. Like she was there but not really present. I told myself it was stress. Work pressure. Life. Anything but what it actually was. Standing outside that party, it all hit me at once. Not like a realization. More like a confirmation. Because deep down, I think I already knew. I just didn't want to say it out loud. I went back inside after a few minutes, but something had changed. The room looked different. Or maybe I did. I spotted Laura again near the center of the crowd, standing next to Greg. Same energy. Same effortless connection. If anything, they seemed even more in sync now. She didn't see me at first. And for a moment, I just watched. Not emotionally. Not even angrily. Just objectively. The way she leaned slightly toward him when he spoke. The way he placed his hand briefly on her lower back as someone passed by. Casual, quick, but familiar. Too familiar. That wasn't new. You don't develop that kind of comfort overnight. When she finally noticed me, she smiled. That same practiced, controlled smile she had used earlier. "Hey," she said, stepping closer. "You okay?" "Yeah," I replied. "Just needed some air." She studied me again like she didn't fully believe it, but she didn't push. "Greg was just telling me about a new project," she said, casually looping me into the conversation like nothing had happened. I glanced at him. Greg Wallace. Confident. Polished. The kind of guy who knew exactly how he was perceived and used it. "Derek," he said, extending his hand. "Good to finally talk properly." I shook it. His grip was firm. Steady. Unbothered. That part stuck with me. If there was anything going on, if he was involved in whatever I had just seen, he didn't show it. Not even a flicker. Which meant one of two things. Either I was wrong, or this had been going on long enough that he didn't feel threatened at all. "Laura's been doing great work," he continued. "Really stepping up lately." "Yeah," I said, glancing at her briefly. "I've noticed." She smiled again, but this time it felt different, tighter, like she wasn't sure what I meant by that. The rest of the conversation blurred together. I nodded when expected, responded when necessary, but my mind wasn't there anymore. I wasn't part of it. I was observing it, and the more I watched, the more certain I became. This wasn't something that started recently. This wasn't one bad decision. This was something that had been building, growing, evolving right in front of me, and I had let it. At some point, Laura got pulled away into another conversation, leaving me alone again. I didn't follow. I didn't look for her. Instead, I grabbed my jacket, turned toward the exit, and walked out. No goodbye. No message. Nothing. I just left. The drive home was quiet. No music. No distractions. Just the sound of the road and my own thoughts finally catching up to me. And somewhere between that party and my driveway, I made a decision. Not out of anger. Not out of impulse. But out of something much colder. Clarity. I wasn't going to confront her again. Not yet. I wasn't going to argue, accuse, or demand explanations. Because whatever was happening, I needed to see the full picture. And for the first time in a long time, I stopped reacting and started paying attention. When I got home that night, the house felt different. It wasn't just empty, it felt unfamiliar. I walked in, dropped my keys on the counter, and stood there for a second longer than usual. Like I was expecting something to feel normal again if I just waited. Didn't. Everything looked the same. The same furniture. The same quiet hum of the refrigerator. The same faint scent of her perfume lingering in the air. But none of it felt like mine anymore. I didn't turn on the lights right away. Just stood there in the dark, letting the silence settle around me. For the first time, I wasn't trying to push the thoughts away. I let them come. Every late night. every excuse, every small, almost invisible shift I had ignored because it was easier than questioning it. I walked into the living room and sat down, leaning forward with my elbows on my knees, staring at nothing. And then something clicked. Not emotionally, logically. If this was a pattern, then there would be more. Not just messages. Proof. Structure. People don't maintain something like this without leaving traces. It's impossible, especially when they think they're safe. And that was the key. She thought she was safe. That's why she didn't panic for more than a second. That's why she redirected instead of explaining. That's why she didn't chase me when I left. Because in her mind, she still had control. I leaned back slowly, exhaling through my nose. All right, I muttered to myself. If that's how she wanted to play it, I'd stop reacting and start watching. The next morning, I acted like nothing happened. That part wasn't even hard. I'd spent years being calm, steady, predictable. One more day of that didn't cost me anything. Laura was already awake when I came downstairs, sitting at the kitchen table, scrolling through her phone, coffee untouched in front of her. She looked up when she heard me. For a brief moment, there was hesitation in her eyes. Not guilt, calculation. "Hey," she said carefully, "you left early last night." "Yeah," I replied, grabbing a mug. "Wasn't really my scene." She nodded like that made sense. Like that was all it was. "You should have told me," she added. "I was looking for you." That almost made me laugh. Instead, I just shrugged. "You seemed busy." Her fingers tightened slightly around her phone. There it was again. That micro-reaction. So small most people would miss it. But now I was looking for it. "I was working," she said, "talking to Greg about some things." "Of course," I replied, pouring coffee. "Big project, right?" She studied me for a second, like she was trying to figure out if there was something behind my words. But I kept it neutral, flat, unreadable. "Yeah," she said finally. "Something like that." We sat in silence for a bit, and that's when I noticed something else. Her phone never left her hand. Not for a second. Even when she reached for her cup, it stayed close. Screen angled slightly away from me. It wasn't subtle anymore. It was instinct. And instincts don't come from nowhere. They come from repetition. "Long day today?" I asked casually. "Yeah," she said quickly. "Meetings, then dinner with the team." I nodded slowly. There it was again. "Work dinner. How late?" I asked. She hesitated just for a fraction of a second. "Not sure," she said. "Depends how it goes." I took a sip of coffee, letting the silence stretch just a bit longer than comfortable. "All right," I said. "Drive safe." That caught her off guard. I could tell. She expected something else. A question. A reaction. Maybe even suspicion. But I gave her nothing. And that unsettled her more than any argument would have. The rest of the day I didn't text her. Didn't check in. Didn't ask where she was or how things were going. And she noticed. Because around 7:30, my phone buzzed. "Laura, dinner ran late. Don't wait up." Short. Controlled. Predictable. I stared at the message for a few seconds before putting the phone down. No response. That was important. Because now the pattern would either continue or break. Around 9:15, I picked up my keys. Not because I was angry. Not because I wanted confrontation. But because I needed confirmation. If she was telling the truth, I'd see it. If she wasn't, I'd know exactly where to look next. The restaurant she mentioned was about 20 minutes away. I parked across the street, far enough not to be noticed, but close enough to see the entrance clearly. And then I waited. 10 minutes. 20. 30. People came and went. Couples. Groups. Employees taking smoke breaks. But not her. Not once. I checked the time again. 9:52. Dinner ran late, right? I leaned back in my seat, staring at the building. There was no rush, no frustration, just clarity settling in deeper. She wasn't there, which meant one thing. She wasn't even trying to maintain the lie anymore. And that was a mistake, because lies only work when they're consistent. And now, I had my first real crack in the story. I started the engine, not in a hurry, just moving forward with a quiet sense of purpose. Because now I wasn't guessing anymore. I wasn't reacting to suspicions. I was following a trail. And something told me this was just the beginning. I didn't go home right away. That would have been the old version of me, the one who needed immediate answers, immediate closure, immediate confrontation. But something had changed the moment I saw that message at the party. Now, I needed certainty. And certainty doesn't come from assumptions. It comes from patterns. I drove slowly, not following a specific direction at first, just letting my thoughts settle into something structured. If she wasn't at the restaurant, then the question wasn't if she was lying. It was how often, and more importantly, where she actually was. I pulled over after a few minutes and checked my phone again. Still no new messages, no follow-up, no attempt to reinforce the story. That told me something else. She didn't think she needed to, which meant she believed I wasn't checking, that I wasn't paying attention, that I was still the same predictable version of myself she'd been managing for months. I leaned back in the seat, exhaling slowly. "All right," I muttered. Then I opened our shared location app. We had it installed years ago, nothing controlling, just convenience. Finding each other at stores, coordinating plans. At some point, it just became background noise. Until now. Her location loaded after a second. And there it was. Not the restaurant. Not even close. A different part of the city entirely. Quieter. Less crowded. The kind of area you don't end up in by accident. Especially not during a team dinner. I stared at the map for a few seconds, letting the realization settle in completely. Then I started the engine. The drive there was about 15 minutes. 15 minutes of silence, broken only by the occasional glance at the map to make sure she hadn't moved. She hadn't, which meant she wasn't just passing through. She was there for a reason. When I got close, I slowed down, scanning the street carefully. And then I saw it. Private club. Not flashy. No bright signs. Just a subtle entrance, minimal lighting, and a line of expensive cars parked along the side. The kind of place you only know about if someone introduces you to it. Or brings you there. I parked a little further down, far enough to stay unnoticed, and turned off the engine. For a moment I just sat there. No racing thoughts. No emotional spike. Just observation. People went in and out occasionally. Well-dressed. Confident. The kind of crowd that didn't worry about being seen. Because they didn't expect consequences. I checked the app again. Still inside. So this was it. This was one of the places. One of the real locations behind the vague work dinners and late nights. I leaned forward slightly, resting my hands on the steering wheel. "All right," I said under my breath, and I waited. Time moved slower out there. 10 minutes passed, then 20, then 30. I didn't touch my phone, didn't distract myself. I just watched. Around 10:40, the door opened again. A small group stepped out, laughing mid-conversation. Not her. Another 10 minutes. Then finally, I saw her. Laura stepped out of the entrance, adjusting her coat. Her posture relaxed in a way that didn't match the version of her I saw at home anymore. But she wasn't alone. Greg walked out right behind her. Close. Too close. He said something. I couldn't hear it. But she smiled immediately. That same smile from the party. Natural. Effortless. Familiar. They paused near the entrance for a moment, talking like there was no rush. Like this wasn't something they needed to hide. Like it was normal. That was the part that hit differently. Not the fact that they were together, but how comfortable they were. This wasn't new. This wasn't secret in the way I thought. This was routine. Then Greg placed his hand lightly on her back, guiding her toward his car. Not hesitant. Not testing boundaries. Just natural. And she didn't react. Didn't pull away. Didn't even hesitate. She moved with him like it belonged there. I felt something tighten in my chest. But it wasn't explosive. It was controlled. Contained. Because now I wasn't guessing anymore. I wasn't imagining scenarios. I was watching reality unfold in front of me. They reached the car. A sleek, dark vehicle parked near the entrance. He opened the passenger door. She got in without a word, like she'd done it before, many times. He walked around, got into the driver's seat, and a second later, the car pulled away. I waited a few seconds before starting my engine. Not rushing, just following, at a distance, enough to keep them in sight, but far enough not to be noticed. They drove out of the area, heading toward the outskirts of the city. Less traffic, fewer lights, more privacy. Every turn confirmed the same thing. This wasn't spontaneous. They knew exactly where they were going, and I had a feeling I already knew what I was about to see. But I followed anyway, because feeling something and proving it are two very different things. And tonight, I was done with feelings. I wanted proof. They didn't drive fast. That was the first thing I noticed. No urgency, no hesitation, just a steady, confident pace like they had all the time in the world. Like this wasn't something that needed to be hidden or rushed. I stayed a few cars behind, keeping just enough distance to avoid drawing attention. The roads got quieter the further we went. Streetlights spaced out, traffic thinning. Every turn took us further away from anything that looked like a normal work dinner. And the more distance we covered, the clearer it became. This wasn't the first time they'd made this drive. They weren't checking directions. They weren't second-guessing anything. They knew exactly where they were going. After about 15 minutes, Greg's car slowed down and turned into a narrow driveway just off the main road. I followed, but not directly. I drove past first, just enough to catch a glimpse. And there it was, a boutique hotel. Small, private, the kind of place that doesn't rely on visibility or walk-ins. No large signs, no crowds, just a quiet, upscale building tucked away from everything else. Deliberate. I kept driving for another block, then turned around slowly and parked on the opposite side of the road, partially hidden by a row of trees. From there, I had a clear view of the entrance. Greg's car was already parked near the front. The engine inside my chest didn't race. It didn't spike. If anything, everything slowed down. Like my mind had finally caught up to what my instincts had been telling me for weeks. I watched as they got out of the car. No distance between them. No awkwardness. No hesitation. He walked around to her side again. Not necessary, not performative, just familiar, like it was part of their routine. She stepped out, adjusted her coat, and said something that made him smirk. Then, without missing a beat, they walked inside together. Side by side, close enough that there was no misunderstanding. The doors closed behind them, and just like that, it was done. No dramatic reveal. No confrontation, no scene, just quiet, undeniable confirmation. I sat there for a long time after that. 5 minutes, 10, maybe more. I wasn't checking the time, because there was nothing left to rush toward, nothing left to question. This wasn't suspicion anymore. It wasn't doubt. It wasn't even betrayal in the way people usually describe it. It was clarity. Cold, sharp, irreversible clarity. Every late night, every work dinner, every moment she made me feel like I was overthinking, overreacting, imagining things. All of it lined up perfectly now. This wasn't something that had just started. This was a system, a routine, a second life she had been managing alongside ours. And she had been doing it well, until she didn't. I leaned my head back against the seat and let out a slow breath. There was no point going inside. No point confronting them. What would that change? Nothing. It wouldn't undo anything. It wouldn't give me answers I didn't already have. And more importantly, it would give them a chance to react, to adjust, to start covering things up more carefully. No, that wasn't the move. Because now, I had something far more valuable than anger. I had information. And information used correctly changes everything. I started the engine and pulled away quietly. No rush, no dramatic exit. Just a decision forming with every mile I put between myself and that place. By the time I got home, I already knew what I was going to do next. I wasn't going to confront her. Not yet. I wasn't going to accuse, argue, or demand anything. because the moment I did that, the game would change. And right now, she thought she was winning. She thought she still had control. She thought I was exactly where she left me. Clueless, predictable, manageable. That was her biggest mistake. Because what she didn't realize was that I had already stepped out of that role. I walked into the house, closed the door behind me, and locked it. The same house, the same walls, but it felt different now. Not broken, not destroyed, just exposed. Like everything that had been hidden inside, it was finally visible. I took off my jacket, set my keys down, and stood there for a moment in the quiet. Then I pulled out my phone, opened my contacts, and scrolled until I found the number I hadn't used in years. A guy I knew through a business connection. Private investigator. Reliable. Discreet. At the time, I saved his number just in case. Never thought I'd actually use it. I stared at the screen for a second longer. Not hesitating. Just acknowledging the shift. Because this was the moment things stopped being passive. Stopped being reactive. And started becoming intentional. I pressed call. He picked up after the second ring. Yeah? It's Derek Hall, I said calmly. We met a few years back through Collins. A short pause. Yeah, I remember. What can I do for you? I glanced around the empty house, then back at the phone. I need everything, I said. Movements, meetings, messages if possible. I want a full picture. Another pause. Longer this time. You sure you want to go that route? He asked. I didn't even think about it. Yes, because I wasn't looking for reassurance anymore. I wasn't looking for explanations. I wasn't looking to fix anything. I was looking for the truth. All of it, no matter how deep it went. All right, he said finally. Send me the details. I'll start tomorrow. Good, I replied. And as I ended the call, one thought settled in completely. This wasn't over. Not even close. Because now, I wasn't just uncovering a betrayal. I was building a case. The next few days, I didn't ask questions. I didn't react. I just watched. Laura kept her routine. Late nights, guarded phone, distant tone. Like nothing had changed. But now, every move felt calculated. Every word rehearsed. Meanwhile, the investigator started sending updates. Times, locations, patterns. It wasn't occasional. It was consistent, structured, almost scheduled. And the more I saw, the clearer it became. This wasn't just an affair. It was a double life she had perfected. Then came the messages. Not just meetings, conversations. Casual, confident, completely unhidden in tone. She wasn't conflicted. She wasn't unsure. She was comfortable. That was the part that hit hardest. There was no guilt in her words, no hesitation, just familiarity, routine, like I had already been replaced long before I noticed. And sitting there, reading through it all, I realized something final. This wasn't about losing her. I had already lost her months ago.